Well, why don't we go ahead and get started, everyone? Other folks may join here in a few moments, but we have a fairly packed agenda, so I don't want to belabor. First of all, welcome to the COAC meeting. For our COAC members, thanks for making the time, and for all others, general members of the public, as well as staff and critical partners, thank you for joining us. We expect to have a really packed and fun-filled and informative agenda as always. So with that, I'm going to ask Susan to just go through some of the instructions for today, a kind of a reminder of how we navigate Zoom. So Susan, with that, please take it away.
Thank you, and hello everyone. Susan Heyman here, providing facilitation team support to these meetings. So just a couple of reminders here as we work through Zoom. I think you're all getting to be pretty experts at it. In fact, Christine was just mentioning how many Zoom meetings she's been on lately, so realize you're probably pros. But the main things we want to remind you of, down in the bottom of your screen, if you're on a desktop, you'll see a little image that says participants. And if you click on that participants icon, it will open a panel that will look something like this. You'll be able to see a list of everyone that is participating here as the panelists. And you can also click over on the attendees tab and you can see who has joined from the public. Folks that are in listen only mode, your screens will look different from this. You won't be able to see all the participants, and you'll have a little hand at the bottom of your screen that will enable you to raise your hand when we get to public comment. But for the committee members, the other thing I want to point out to you that's important, when you open the panelist tab, down here in the corner is something that says raise hand. And if you can use that little button to indicate to us that you need to, would like to make a comment or you have a question, then Janelle will be able to see your little blue hand will raise on the screen for him and he'll know to call on you. I'll keep an eye on that as well. If for some reason you're not able to see that or find that little button, or maybe you're on a tablet or something and it's not showing up, then if you could just raise your hand and maybe shake it just a little bit, but hold it for a moment, and then that will catch Janelle's eye and catch mine as well, and we'll keep track. During the meeting, when you're not speaking, we'll keep everybody muted just to manage the background noise. So please don't feel offended or that we don't want to hear from you if you are unmuted and you're not speaking and I go in there and mute you. And that is the only reason for doing that. And if for any reason we have your name wrong here on the participants tab, please feel free. You can go in there and change your name, and that will also show up on the bottom of your screen, or pardon me, on the bottom of your image on the gallery here. Just a couple of things to note. We are actually recording the meeting tonight, and this will be posted after the meeting will be posted to the website. So want you to be aware of that. We're also live streaming. It just makes the meeting more accessible to people, and we found that many people will access through the YouTube live streaming and may not join through Zoom. So this is a way for us to just ensure that we have better outreach to folks. Again, attendees are in listen only mode. There will be this brief public comment opportunity. If we see some hands raised, and Janelle will remind you of this as we get closer to that point in the agenda. If you would prefer to write written comments, or if you have a lot to say, then please note the info@i5rosequarter.org, and please send your written comments there, and note that they are COAC public comments. Also, please note the phone number here for Ray Outlaw, 253-241-0131. If you have any technical difficulties, committee members, please do reach out to Ray, call or text him, and he will help you get going. I think with that, Janelle, those are all the reminders that I had.
Great, thank you, Susan. And if we can go to the next slide, the meeting agenda. And again, welcome everyone. Thank you for making the time to participate in today's COAC meeting, members of the public as well as COAC members. Once again, my name is John L. Bell, and I have the pleasure of being the facilitator for COAC. We have a packed agenda tonight, and so we're going to kind of keep the show moving here. Just a little bit of an overview of what we'll be discussing this evening. We'll have a quick recap of our last meeting, April 21st. I hope that everyone received that meeting material just for edification for both COAC and members of the public. That material will be placed on the website, which is the I-5 rollsquarter.org, and click the Get Involved tab and then the Events tab. And there you'll see information on COAC. COAC members should have also received that via email. If you did not get that in email, please just send me an email and I'll be sure that we resend that again. We will talk a fair amount about the COAC charter change. We will talk about the upcoming Meet the Proposers community event, have an opportunity for public comments, and then discuss conclusion and next steps. So that's our agenda this evening. Next slide, please. Next slide. As a reminder for our ground rules, is really important that everyone has a chance to participate by listening to and respecting the diverse views and opinions. One of the reasons why ODOT has put together such a varied group of experts is that all of you have an opportunity of providing your great counsel as we sort of shepherd this process. So we really want to provide an opportunity for everyone to participate. It's really important that we listen with an open mind. We all come to this work with varying levels of experience and expertise and lived experience. And so let's attempt to really utilize our listening ability with an open mind. Value learning from different input. Again, diversity at its core is so critically important, but in order that we really leverage the diversity of this group is really to value the various different input. Stay open to new ways of doing things. Treat others constructively and respectfully. Next slide, please. Respect the role of the facilitator to guide the group process. My role is to help lead this discussion and to keep it moving forward. And I'll do that in various ways. Please help me to do that by making my job a lot easier. So thank you in advance for that. It's really important that we attack the problem, not the person. I think all of us are here with the same goal in mind, which is how do we build this project in a way that is going to provide opportunity for the communities that we care about. So it's really important that we attack the problem of helping to achieve that goal, not the individuals around the table. Disagreement, frustrations, and differences of opinion are acknowledged, explored, and addressed. And that's a core tenet of this work. Next slide, please. Next slide. So just as a quick recap, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this material, our last meeting, we had an opportunity of really looking at the input relative to the specifications that were listed in the RFP. We had a robust discussion on that. We talked about the various committees. We have, of course, the CAC, which is the Community Advisory Committee. And then we have the ESC, which is the Executive Steering Committee. We talked about the roles, representation, and the various facilitators. And I think today we are joined both by Dr. Holt as well as Christine Moses from those various committees. So thanks for your participation. We also talked about the various partnership opportunities, whether it's buying a trust, the relationship that Prosper Portland has to this project. We talked about the cost to complete report. We talked about the need to really desegregate the data with respect to the construction and the workforce diversity. We talked about CMGC contract compliance and the role really of the diversity coordinator to ensure that compliance. So that was a recap of our last meeting. Next slide, please. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Amber and Andre to really walk through the purpose of the charter change, what the new role of COAC will be. You have received in your email a draft charter. Just by way of sort of introduction to that, Megan and I will be spending time with each of you over the next week or so to really receive any feedback or input you might have in terms of that charter. It is still in draft form. And so that's going to be a really important conversation. And again, the purpose of COAC is really to focus on workforce diversity as well as DBE participation. It's the role of the community to really help steward that process. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Amber and Andre to walk us through these next slides.
Susan, can you advance to the next slide, please? Great. So this is, you can see the purple box in the middle. So the COAC is, as we discussed at the last meeting, the COAC is changing its role to one of an oversight role, and really it's an implementation arm. And so this just gives you a visual representation of its role in relation to the ESC as well as the OTC and the Citizens Advisory Committee. Can you go to the next slide? So, so we talked a little bit about this at the last meeting about the change in your role and the change in your responsibilities. So ODOT will retain the role of directing the contractor, but really your role as an oversight arm is the accountability arm. The accountability arm in partnership with ODOT, and in that role, and we sent out the charter to y'all. It includes like the topics which are arranged. Essentially, your role is to do everything from reviewing the diversity plan to looking at the participation through the dashboard and the workforce participation relative to the goals. You can ask questions of the subcontractors and make recommendations on a variety of topics. And then the other thing is asking questions directly to the CMGCs as it relates to those questions or the topics that you're interested in. And so the one thing, just so you understand the mechanics, Janelle will continue to be the facilitator of the meetings. However, once we have the CMGC on board, the CMGC will be the one that will be presenting information along with Andre and I, depending on the topics. And I guess the really important distinction, because we're now moving into implementation, thus far we've been focused on, y'all have given us a lot of feedback on on policy and the development of policy as it relates to the DBE program and the workforce program. And we've added components based on your recommendations into both of those programs. Now what it's really about is about implementation, in which case what that really means is that, yes, your role is to hold the CMGC accountable and to help ODOT do that, but it's also about providing solutions to the problems that should potentially arise. So that's the other part of your role. You are encouraged to either ask questions directly to Janelle based on the longer charter that we sent to you, or you can send them directly to Janelle, or we can talk about them at the next meeting. But we wanted to give you time to actually review the whole thing before you then, ask your questions or raise your comments or issues. Any other questions?
That maybe why
Um,
don't we,
Just,
Andre, do you have,
John,
go ahead. Andre.
before we go ahead, a couple other things. We're changing the name to the O&A is staying the same, but it's becoming Oversight Advisory Committee, and that's important as we get a contractor on board. We are looking for you, our COAC members, to provide that oversight. We will give you information. The contractor is responsible to make sure you get the information you need to do your job, and look at the information, make recommendations. But the other side of that is to provide them assistance. You're all very knowledgeable of the community of contractors, of all the individuals that are and organizations, and where they have difficulty, to provide them direction in that way. We're going to ask for written results, responses to questions from the contractor, and you can evaluate those. So you're going to help build a diversity plan from the start and help them meet these goals that we've set forth and meet the community goals. So, and part of that is supporting ODOT and its compliance and monitoring areas. So if there's areas that you think that are problematic, that's where we need your help to, A, point them out, and B, what can we do about them? So this works really well. The contractor is going to meet monthly with you, and we expect the contractor to be, prepared to address your concerns and questions. With that, I'll kind of drop it, except for the last one. The charter change is in front of you. I don't expect questions today, but we want to give you a couple of weeks to review it. And then if you have questions, please send those questions to John L. or with your one-on-ones to ask those questions to them, and we'll respond to it. As John L. said at the beginning, it's draft. And so we wanted to give you some time to hear what we're proposing. These are just highlights of that charter change, but there's the opportunity to delve more in depth at your own leisure, ask questions, and then we'll come back at the next meeting and finalize it. So with that, open it up to questions from members.
Great. And just to frame our Q&A, we have about 10 minutes for this particular section. If you do have questions, please use the feature, the raise hand feature, and we will call on you accordingly. So with that, I'll open up for questions. Questions, comments?
So where's the raise hand feature? Where's the raise hands feature?
Susan, do you want to?
Sure. If you go, Mr. Posey, if you go to the bottom of the screen, the participant little people there, if you click on that, it'll open a panel and it'll be on the bottom right.
Oh, okay, sure. Okay, there you go. I see it. Thank you.
You bet.
Great. James Posey.
Okay. Well, I just want to know how much time. You guys did a real good job of laying out what this group has been changed to, but how much time do you all anticipate this committee should be involved in this process?
Again, we're going to meet once a month because we don't want to have the results get too far ahead of us and not be able to make course corrections if needed. And I would, if things go well, not more than 2 hours a month. One meeting for 2 hours and not more than 2 hours. We will keep it at 2 hours at the maximum. And we don't, hopefully things go well, and all the indicators, every contractor is doing well, and we don't have to, make any corrections.
So what What's the difference between this committee and the community advisory committee? To start off the top of your head there.
Megan,
The advisory committee that Christine is leading.
yeah, exactly. The CAC, it sounds like.
So the community advisory committee, and maybe Megan can chime in here, is focused on looking at the lids and the lid, what's going to be on the lids, around the lids, and that landscape, if you will, that space. And we're truly just focused on contracting. We're going to have the contractor, the selected contractor, in front of us for a number of years, and that's our focus, not the space around the lids or any of that. So there's a true distinction. They're not going to come down, if you will, into our space, and we're not going to kind of go over to their space.
That's
Yeah,
more,
I'll just
yeah, sorry, go ahead, Megan.
no, just to say, the community advisory committee, the CAC, as Andre said, is focused more on the input on design and design recommendations to the project team, and then up to the executive steering committee as well, along with our public engagement process. Whereas this community oversight advisory committee is focused specifically on our DDE and workforce program and coordination directly with the contractor. So that's, as Andre said, that's the distinction, but I just wanted to clarify that CAC was broader design for the project that includes the highway covers.
Christine, I see you have a question. Go ahead.
Oh, just a minor question to follow up with James. I can see that the 2 hours we're having the meeting. What about reading time? Do you anticipate, are we going to get a lot of materials before the meeting to read and to prepare? Or is it just going to be the meeting is sufficient enough to whatever we need to do?
It depends on the topic. It'll depend on the topic.
There will be one, we want to get reports out to you, probably will be within 10 days prior to you coming to the meeting. And those reports will be, here's the results of since the last time you met, here's what's, here's the results. And so you'll be able to see those and review those. With that will be highlights of areas of concern. And from that standpoint, any information that you had requested from the last meeting or issues, and hopefully responses to those issues. And so, as I said, really it's looking at the results, looking at areas of concern, and then reviewing the responses. So, and then we will review the results each meeting and go through them, not in detail, but highlight the results and highlight areas of concern. Also, it's not only about concern, but areas of support that people are doing well in, and certainly give kudos to those people and contractors, and also provide feedback that you may have, opportunity for a lot of feedback from you as committee members. So the majority of the meeting hopefully is you responding to the information you've seen before you got there, or you see at the meeting, and the contractor's response to the things that we have talked to the contractor. We will meet before this meeting with the contractor and review the same results with them. So the contractor is not going to come and they will be, the only surprise will be your questions, but not the areas of concern. We will have not address those, but raise those before with the contractor, probably a week before, to ensure that the contractor is focused on if there's issues or concerns.
Thank you, Andre.
Do we have any authority at this group, or is this just more information gathering? For example, if we feel as a group that we're not happy with that particular contractor. This is just a worst case scenario. And we feel that certain measures need to take place, and we express that and express our concerns. So is that all you want from us, or do we have any authority at all?
In terms of ODOT still directs the contractor. I mean, the contract is between ODOT and the contractor, so there's no way they can give up that authority. But that said, we have worked very, very hard to make sure that if that worst case scenario you described came to pass and you felt there was a significant problem, that we would make sure that ODOT understood what the problem was. And, as it says here, that we would ask the contractor to correct them in written form and talk to ODOT about what options are there for corrective action. Because clearly, you can't tell the contractor what to do as an advisory group, but ODOT is part of this partnership. Is as in any partnership, they have to listen to the other partner, and you're that other side. And we've worked really hard to make sure that ODOT is going to have on it and will listen to your concerns and work to get those resolved. The idea is that we do it in a positive way to make the project successful. So hopefully we never get there. And that's part of your role is we get a contractor that, is responsive to your concerns. And that's kind of the partnership there.
Thank you, Andre. Pastor Hennessy.
Yes, first of all, I want to say good afternoon to everybody and apologize for being a few minutes late. It's good to see you. And I really respect and appreciate the great work that has been done. I've got an overlapping meeting at 5:30, but I've said to my office that I'm going to stay until 6 at least, because I understand that's when we're supposed to be finished. But I wanted to say, I did start reading the charter. I'm grateful that we will have an opportunity to do one-on-ones, and I probably missed about when the one-on-ones is this the next couple of weeks, that there is the plan for us to do that with our offices.
That's correct, Pastor Hennessy. You'll be hearing from Megan's assistant, who will be coordinating time for one-on-ones within the next 2 weeks here.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to that. And then I would suggest that you try to do my one-on-one as a two-on-one with James Posey in the room with me, so I can try to keep him at bay.
Funny, Pastor.
Other comments, questions? We have a few more moments, and then we need to keep moving the agenda here.
My hand's up.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Posey.
Yeah, Andre, I've been in a series of these meetings with you. You've been on one side, I've been on the other side, and I noticed that the dynamics is that, I know you're getting paid, but James Posey, they want me to be benevolent and volunteer my time, and I just wonder, have you guys ever thought about paying people for doing this work? You get what you pay for. I think you all realize that if people really are earnestly going to spend time doing this stuff, they need to be compensated for it, especially us poor minority folk. Have you thought about paying people? Number one. Number two, you did a good job of talking about the accountability and what happens with our recommendations. But Andre, I got to tell you, I didn't see anything in there that really gives me the assurance that whatever we say or whatever we do is going to be really viable at ODOT, and whether or not they're going to break the pattern. We spent a long time talking about the culture of ODOT and their resistance to anything that's progressive. And yet you want us to believe just because we say something and you transmit that third hand up to ODOT that they're going to follow through on our recommendations. Explain that to me.
James, I'm gonna let Megan respond to that because she's ODOT and you're right, I'm the consultant. To your first question about payment, we'll bring that up with ODOT. It's a legitimate concern, and I've heard that from other groups. So I will bring that up with ODOT. To your second question about whether ODOT is changing, I will let Megan respond to that because she can speak for ODOT. But I will say this, ODOT has changed, just the fact that we're going to have this, and it says accountability and a partnership with ODOT. That is a significant change. So now whether they follow through, I'll let Megan talk to you about that. So Megan?
Sure. Well, James, you're right in asking the question because historically we have not built that trust or given you a reason to think that you're here in a space that's going to be meaningful in changing the course. But by factor, as Andre said, of standing up this community oversight advisory committee, it's a new voice for the community in partnership with us at ODOT as we move forward with the contractor. And so I recognize that it's a bit of a trust us moment when we frankly don't deserve that trust us moment, but as we develop the charter and really define those roles and responsibilities of this group, it's on us to listen to you. We're spending our time here together because it's meaningful, and your expertise with the community, with contracting, matters to us, and you know it better than us. So help us work with the contractor, be a partner with us, and holding us and the contractor accountable in the work that we're doing.
Mm-hmm. So I know we only have a few seconds. I'm taking up a lot of time, but I proposed this situation already to you guys. Is that we've had violence on our streets, we've had protests, we've had riots, and most of it's around Black people and what they haven't had, and the discrepancies and the racism. And I find it fascinating that we have a document and we have a process going forward that does not even mention Black people and what the outcome should be as a result of this close to $1 billion project. And I know that might be out of you guys' hands, but I want you to understand that people, when they see this, and you talk about being equitable over the next several years, and you don't even mention the target group that's being impacted by this particular process, then it's really disheartening. I want you all to know that.
Thanks for that comment. I don't know if there's a response needed for that. I think point well taken, and let's see what we can do in terms of advancing this work such that the Black community can benefit. So with that, let's go ahead and move to the next section here. Please, next slide, Susan. Great. Andre, Amber, why don't you walk us through the upcoming Meet the Proposers event?
James, I just want to take a second and, we've done this a long time, but I want to thank you for raising that. It has been a long journey to get us here, and you're right. And we need to do better. And so thank you. That's why you're here, and we will do better. I mean, it's just that it is an issue, and so I will say we're trying to do better, and we do need to do better, and we need to raise those voices. So thank you. Meet the Proposers. First, before I start with this, there is still a RFP process going on, and it's in the evaluation stage. As we mentioned in the last time we met, there's 2 proposers that submitted. The finalists have not been selected yet, and so we're still under this cone of silence. I know there's contractors listening to this today. So the Meet the Proposers, as we told you, and as was recommended by this group, was a process where bring the proposers, the finalists, before the community as a public process, and that process is described in the RFP, and this is the follow through on that process. So I'm going to describe the process. I can't answer a lot of questions. What I can tell you up front is anybody evaluating in the interview process will not be at the Meet the Proposers event. And but it is a public process. And the next slide. So it's a public event. Anybody will be able to attend the event. The event follows the instructions held by ODOT, and that is it's really a ODOT purchasing process. Contractors in the competitive range present. Each contractor will get 15-minute presentations each. Followed by questions from the public to be answered by each proposer. We're estimating 10 to 14 questions. It's, again, 2 hours from that standpoint. There will be an introduction, and then there will be a brief overview of the Rose Quarter. Then there will be ground rules by myself. Then there will be questions from me, and then there will be questions from OPO, and then there will be a close by OPO, and then we will move on from that. Will be the event. The questions, there will be a summary of the questions, and those summary will be provided to the interview group, just a summary, and that's it. Next slide. So this is the role and the expectations and the public. COAC will have questions included in the public questions, your public body. And so we're asking you to provide questions, not now. Don't tell us any questions now. You have to 6/29 to send your questions to John L. And you can send as many as you want. It will be between 6 and 7 questions from the COAC and 6 or 7 questions potentially or more from the public. Both, since they're all public questions, all the questions are vetted by ODOT OPO. And I will ask the questions and identify those questions from the COAC. And then Jody will ask the remaining public questions from that standpoint. And so this is your opportunity. You've not seen their proposals, but you have seen the RFP. You know, as John L. said, you know, your responsibility is DBE, OJT, workforce. We've talked about the Black community. We've talked about, you know, how to get jobs over the last year and a half. So this is an opportunity to ask questions, and we'll ask the contractor questions. The contractor will have 2 minutes to answer each question from that standpoint. And we'll just kind of go through the questions. Any limited questions? Do you have any limited questions? Because I can't answer some because they're just not. We can't disclose some of that information.
Any questions, comments? Okay.
I just want to emphasize, please send your questions to John L. and try to make your questions, because they have a limited time to respond, make them such that they're only kind of one point to a question, because we're trying to not get multiple questions bundled in one question, so they get one question. And from that standpoint, and from your technical expertise, from your viewpoint and your chair, what's the question you want to make sure is asked? And we're going to look at them along with OPO and select from the public a set of questions. And again, this is to illuminate for the contractor, for really the public, and for you as part of that public what is the contractor thinking about this process in this project?
Any comments or questions on this section here?
This is Amber. I will just say one other thing, which is, this will come sometime, this Meet the Proposers event will be in July. Please, when that date is determined, we'll send you an Outlook request, and probably from me, and also follow up with you so that you know.
Great. Well, seeing no hands raised for questions, I think we're gonna move to our next section, and we'll probably actually, I see Lee Fleming and Michael Burtz. Lee, why don't you kick it off, and then Michael, will go to you next.
My question is simple. This slide deck will be made available to us.
Yes.
Thank you.
Michael?
Yes, so lesson learned from Multnomah County Oversight Committee was that these contractors, when they bid these jobs, they get out into the project and then they begin to look around to try to figure out how to meet their numbers. And I think Lee or someone, I know I've brought it up before, there needs to be pre-bid meeting where contractors are informed about union and non-union training programs, the pre-apprenticeship programs, where they can draw people from. So they don't show up at the oversight committee saying, well, I don't have any in my training program and I don't know where to go get them, so I'll just pay the fine and move on. So I'd like to suggest that at some point we just bake that into this process. So at least going in, they know what their options are, right? Where they can find people, whether they're signatory, non-signatory, where they can find people, who's in the gene pool. And if the programs they're reaching out to need to beef up their numbers, then they at least get out in front of it.
Andre, Amber, can you respond to that, please?
Yeah, I can. Michael, we're not that far away from once the contractor's on board. There will be some, I'm sure, partnering sessions, whatever they call them, to onboarding to bring the contractor on board before they come to you. So it's a good session, and we'll make sure that's put into that process.
Kenichi and then James Posey.
Hi, everyone. I have I guess a question / recommendation. I was in a call a couple of days ago, and a sub-tier contractor was talking about how she had been talking with a subcontractor on a project, and after the work was awarded, the subcontractor decided they no longer needed her services and wanted to self-perform the work that they had gone to the owner saying that she would do. I'd like to recommend that we build in a way for workers and sub-tier contractors to be able to directly access project owners, to be able to state things that are uncomfortable for them or any complaints that they might have. Just a good feedback loop for people who might not be so connected to the top of the project.
Amber, Andre, could you respond?
So one thing, so there is requirements that pertain to termination and substitution already in the RFP. And that also will be part of your role in the oversight role. And I'm sorry, what was your other question? Recommendations for us to look at that or something like that?
A way that people like workers and sub-tier contractors who are not as close you know, they're a little downstream from the chain of command, can directly access project owners if they feel like they're being unfairly treated in a job, or, you know, just need to talk to somebody.
Mhm. Yeah, we also have, I don't recall what it's called, it's essentially like the Green Dot program. We also have the Green Dot program on this project to ensure non-discrimination and non-harassment on the program, on the work site.
I would also add, Kenichi, is we have the opportunity really, as Michael Birch's question, to on our onboarding process and to make sure that the high levels of any contractor are accessible. And they also have a DVE coordinator that we wrote very strongly with input from the COAC again to ensure that there is access to someone to address the concerns of not only individuals but workforce. So we will work, and again, good suggestions, and we'll take those and make sure they're part of our onboarding process with the contractor.
If I may, I don't think you guys answered her question. What she is addressing is a situation that we manage in our agency with through the subcontracting plan, that if a prime or any of their subs, lower tier subs, deviate from their subcontracting plan, they have to request permission
Yes.
to replace that
Yes.
sub, especially a co-bid certified sub, with another. They have to get permission from the agency. That's what she's asking.
We had the exact same requirement on this, in the RFP.
Great, thank you, Lee, for clarifying that.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah, we
a
had the-
traumatic experience for that young woman, and we really want to ensure that, you know, everybody is being on the up and up with this. Didn't seem like the first time it had happened to her.
Mm.
Yeah, and I would say too, if there's going to be a replacement, part of that process would be coming to the COAC as a contractor, and if there's issues to make that potentially the COAC member may be able to help facilitate and work with that contractor to work out any issues if it's something, and or if there is a true replacement, are there recommendations out of COAC to say, here's from our organizations, a member that may be able to do that similar type of work.
James Posey, I see you have a question. James, I think you're on mute.
Yeah.
There you are.
I just want to kind of chime in here a little bit. Since I have not had the chance to look at the specs, but my understanding is there really is no requirement in the specs for a general contractor, prime contractor, to really meet any goals that specifically to any particular ethnic group. And to my knowledge, I'm not aware of any sanctions, legal sanctions written into the contract or the provisions on the specs that actually requires a general contractor to do anything other than what they traditionally have done. We all know that these contractors, I don't know which ones are bidding on this project, but they're smart people. And when they don't see something in writing about performance and requirements and penalties and sanctions and accountability directly written into the legal document, then they swarm all over the place trying to avoid what we intentionally want them to do. No amount of cajoling or advising or giving instructions or anything typically change them, except whether or not they're going to lose money on this project or whether or not there's going to be some other weighty penalty that's going to cause them to move in the right direction. So my question to you, when they asked when they review the proposals, are you going to ask them, and given the fact there's no requirement in the contract per se, how they're going to meet their goals, or what will motivate them to meet their goals? What do you anticipate their answer will be?
James, we can't ask, we can't tell the interview, OPO does not allow us to tell the interview panel what questions to ask. And so I don't know what questions they will ask of the proposers. But that said, as I said, you have the opportunity to ask questions as COAC of this group.
Yeah, and James, this is Amber. I would follow up with what Andre said and point out a couple things. There is liquidated damages in it related to workforce. The other thing is in the charter, you can ask a variety of questions, and also questions related to disaggregating the data based on their participation. And then the second thing is the CMGC will respond in writing. So from our experience on other projects, this strategy has been successful and can result in significant participation by diverse firms and workers. And the other thing is that related to one of the comments that Michael made, which is extremely important, is that you all can, because that's the whole reason why you're on this COAC, is that each of you have your own set of resources and technical skills that you bring to the table. And there will be a variety of issues that that the Prime encounters throughout this project. And each one of you have an opportunity that when we have problems, that each of you can provide solutions as those problems are identified.
Yeah, I never saw in the context of this.
One second.
I never saw in the context of this.
One second, please. We have Lee, and then we'll come back to you, James.
Oh, I was just following through on the question. I thought she was responding to my question. Go ahead.
So if I'm hearing all this correctly, to piggyback on James' question, while OPO may not be able to ask the question, I hear you saying that this committee is empowered to ask questions that would get at what is the proposer's strategy in supporting the achievement or achievement and excelling of these goals and aspirations that have been outlined in the procurement. Am I hearing you correctly?
Yes, and
Yes.
you can include ethnicity and gender in that. So you
That's
can be
right.
very specific.
Yep.
That's
Yes.
your charge.
Yes. That's the
You
very
can ask
last
those.
bullet. Yep.
You can ask those
Okay.
questions, and throughout the project, and we can
Great.
request they respond in writing.
Excellent. Thank you. I think that's exactly what Mr. Posey was trying to get at.
James Posey?
Yeah, I was also in the context of this conversation, I have not seen anything that assures me that there's going to be a robust compliance person on the ground looking diligently at what goes on this project, having conversations intimately with contractors, subcontractors, and people who might be having problems on a day-to-day basis. And I noticed that you all apply liquidated damages to the workforce, but not to the DBE participation, which to me is reverse thinking, because I thought one of the goals of this project was for you all to enhance, empower minority contractors to be viable in the construction market. And by not providing an emphasis on the contractor versus the workforce, then you create a narrative that doesn't serve minority contractors well, as far as I'm concerned.
So, so I'll start, and I'm sure Andre will add. Because this is a DBE program, there will be a compliance reviews as it relates to commercial useful function. The other thing is there will be a technical assistance program to support the small businesses, as well as a mini CMGC program to build capacity amongst firms. So there are strategies in place, and also compliance assessments.
Very weak, Amber. That's paperwork stuff you're talking about. You know, I've been out here for a while, and I know when you guys do these compliance reviews, it's just mainly paperwork and trying to reconcile numbers and stuff. Very few people are paying any attention to that stuff. You need a policeman on the block to really hover over these contractors to make sure they do the right thing.
James,
that's the failure of all these programs. You're not sending the message out to people. They got to comply.
James, part of what will evolve, and you will see, the COAC will see, is the compliance program, and part of what Amber talked about are the cuff reviews. So the COAC eventually will be seeing that documentation around, here's what we're doing, here's what we found. And so I would hold that judgment until you see the full program. We're saying we've built it in, but there's no contractor to do any compliance on right now. So we're waiting for a contractor. Once they get on the ground, again, that's part of our onboarding to ensure that they understand the expectation as you've outlined. There will be compliance, and we expect them to follow the rules in every step of the way. So that's more to come later on, and that's part of the COAC accountability process of, in a partnership with ODOT, looking at this and saying, from our standpoint, we're the boots on the ground, going out and talking to contractors and workers and that thing, but looking at it and saying, do we need to do more? Where do we need to turn? We think we need to do more, and gathering some advice from you also.
Yeah, I just want to say, you both know that cuff reviews are just one aspect of a robust compliance program. We have so many front companies. We have so much disingenuous stuff around supplies and a whole bunch of stuff that's out there. Unless you got somebody, a policeman out there, forwarding that information back to everybody. Title VI, for example. Yeah, people ought to know they have Title VI provisions in a federal contract. So I'm just not seeing it. Maybe it's going to happen somewhere down the line, but I'm not seeing it.
A quick response, and then Lee has a question as well.
Yeah, I'll just say one last thing, and then I'll be quiet. James, there are other things that are included in Andres and my scope of work that I can't comment on right now because we're still in the code of silence. But the other thing is, with regard to Title VI, maybe that could be one of your first questions.
I would say there is a whole team of folks that are going to do compliance, James. You're not, Amber and I are if anything, we're like the tip of the iceberg. There is a broad group, including OCR and a number of other folks, that will be doing compliance. So I say, wait till we get a contractor on board, and then we can outline to you specifically what will occur throughout the project.
Lee, you had a question? You're on mute, Lee.
Yeah, thank you. I do. And it's kind of an observation I think that might help move this along. Number one, I think it would be helpful, especially for those that don't deal with public procurement on a regular basis, to provide information on what, and because this is going to be a new process for ODOT, to provide information on what the contract administration and what will be the compliance review process, what that's going to look like. Because I think Mr. Posey's point,
Yeah, good point.
there is a certain mindset in the approach on ODOT projects. And we experienced this at the county as well. And you know, right or wrong, we feel that our compliance program is vastly superior. So I think it would be very, very helpful to lay out some, what are the things that will go into the compliance? CUF is only one aspect.
Yeah.
Contract administration,
Right.
there are desk audits. You have a number of things that have to go into this process as a CMGC project to ensure not only that, if you understand the scope and goals of this project, not only is there DBE requirements, and those come with those are federally mandated guidelines that have federal what's the word I'm looking for, penalties for failure. But then you have the other participation goals that are going to go into this that are aspirational. So I think providing that kind of information would be really, really helpful, especially for folks that aren't used to dealing with a CMGC process. I understand these things, and I understand that Andre, you and Amber, you're only one piece of this, but give a complete overview of how that would look, to include how the Office of Civil Rights falls, what their role in this is, what is the PM's role in this, what is the role of the procurement officers in this. That, I think, will help to settle a lot of confusion and calm some nerves, as well as to remind people that the contractor's proposal is part of the contract in the state of Oregon. And thereby anything that is included in both the procurement and that proposal becomes binding upon the proposer. So I just want to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. That was really good suggestion.
Other comments, questions? This is a really rich discussion and very important one as a precursor to the upcoming meeting with the contractors, as well as in preparation for our upcoming COAC meetings, where we'll actually have time with contractors. So really, really rich discussion. Okay, seeing no additional hands raised, we are going to go to our next section, which is public comment. We anticipate being done earlier today. It is such a nice day. Would love to release all of you to nice weather. So Susan, could you go through the public comment and remind us of how many folks we have wanting to provide public comment?
Sure, be pleased to. So I am looking right now at the list of attendees and reminding you all that if any of you wish to make public comment, if you would please click on that little hand that should be in the middle of your screen if you are on Zoom. If you are calling in and you're not going to be able to raise a hand, I don't believe, we can certainly get your comment through the email process, and we have the slide about that and can let you know about that. So I'm just pausing here to see if anybody would like to make comment, and if so, please raise your hand. I am not seeing any hands right now, Jonelle.
We'll give it just a few more moments.
Sure. And while we're waiting to see if any hands go up, I've just noticed a number of other community members have joined during the discussion. So just wanted to make note of that. We have a pretty good group of your committee here now.
Yep. Excellent. Well, seeing no public comments, are there any last minute comments or questions by members of COAC?
I would say, this is Joe McFerrin. I was late on the call, but very rich discussion. So I just wanted to say that, and I think I may reach out to some of the members offline to kind of get fully caught up, and may provide a question or two for the panel.
Thank you for that, Joe, and feel free to reach out to me directly as well. I'm happy to kind of get you up to speed as well. In addition to that, I mentioned earlier, and for all of the COAC members who did not hear this prior, Megan and I will be arranging meetings with each of the COAC members such that we can kind of go through both the charter as well as any other questions or comments you might have. I see that we have Michael Birch, and then we'll go to Pastor Hennessy.
I would like to see in this process a retention program set up with the contractors and the advisory committee to ensure that early term apprentices, when they get on the job, aren't disposed of, you know, helter-skelter, or whatever the term is. The contractors commit to keeping people of color, women on the job, new apprentices, commit to checking in with them. I mean, there's a model out there that works. And we talked about this at Multnomah County, that contractors are in the habit of moving people from job to job to meet their numbers. We don't want to see that happen. We need to push them to hire new people like they do for the general population. So just a placeholder to bring that to the table. Thank you.
Amber, Andre, Megan, did you want to respond to that?
I think it's a good comment. And again, it's something that we can, we have some retention language in the contract, and but we can certainly look at maybe doing some other things. I just want to take one more chance to make sure you send your comments to John L. by the 29th of June for the COAC members so that we can get those. And a lot of your questions to us today sound like questions for the contractor.
Pastor Hennessy? Or Amber, were you going to say something?
No, Andre said
Okay.
what I was going to say. Thank you.
Pastor Hennessy?
Surely, I just want to echo some of the comments that have been made by Mr. Posey and Pastor Fleming as well. One of the things we've all known when we embarked on this this lane that we're in right now is that ODOT's trying to do something new. The process is new and everything else. And it's really incumbent upon all of us to realize, and I've said this from the very beginning, that if there has been a history that has not been as great, it takes a while for trust to be built the way it needs to be. And I see part of our role as a role to make sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. It's also important, and I want to say this to my friend who I consider the godfather of the construction industry, Brother Posey, is that you're not alone. We're all in this together, and we're going to walk down this road together. I believe that we can be extremely successful. It's going to take a lot of work on all of our part, and it's going to take our willingness to do some benefit of the doubt and help build trust, as well as recognize what we've seen before. And I'm certainly committed to do my part as a committee member to make sure that, you know, that it's not about being Pollyanna or anything like that, but it's to say, I really want to see this succeed because I believe it's a model for the rest of the state and the way it does business and the way ODOT does business in the future. So that's my commitment. I'm praying that that's what we do and recognize that we've got tough road to hoe before us, but I believe we can get there.
Nicely said, Pastor, and here to those words. James Posey, I see you have another question or comment.
Yeah, I agree with everything Pastor said, you know, but at the end of the day, you know, we have to do things differently than we've historically done, and I'm not seeing a lot of that. For example, we know there's no Black women in construction. We know there's very few Black or women, period, that are running businesses and so forth. And we know there's only a few things that motivate human beings. One is incentives, and the other is the stick. I would feel much more excited about this project if I saw something outside the box, some incentive focused on deficits where we know we need to do better. I have not seen that. You all want to contain this thing to the federal guidelines, and that's the floor. That's the bottom. There's nothing that says we can't go outside this box to do better. And until I see that we be creative about how we approach this project in the heart of the Black community, this is going to be business as usual, folks. I hate to say that. I want to be pessimistic about it, but we have to. And these young people on the streets are demanding something better than what we've historically done. So it'd be well for you all to talk with all your other partners, the county, the city, and everybody else to do something outside of the box that you all are in. So that's my frustration. And I'm sorry if it offends anybody.
Thank you for that comment, Mr. Posey. Andre, Amber, did you want to react?
Yeah, this is Amber. I just want to say one thing. I agree with you that this community deserves that. And the other thing I would say is, James, you know my federal experience. You know my federal experience. And I have seen very few projects across the country that have the elements, all of the elements in one project. Very few. The mentor protege, the technical assistance. I've seen and it's a CMGC. So to your point about whether or not, ODOT is doing things differently, those are three significant things that are different, that have never been done by ODOT.
It's unlikely to move the needle, Amber. Unfortunately, it's unlikely to move the needle. These are the floors. These are the bottom. I'm glad that you got something comprehensive and you can see across the spectrum, but these programs don't operate nationally at any level and anywhere doing any. We haven't been able to find a model at the federal level that's been successful, with the exception of maybe TriMet here locally. So, and they were outside the box again. I could show you areas in which TriMet went outside the box. Why don't you guys do the same thing? You're all federal. I don't get it.
Felicia, I see that you have a question.
So to piggyback on what James has said, maybe one of the ways to think outside the box is someone that's part of the preference policy for the Northeast Oversight Committee. One of the things we really challenged ourselves with in thinking outside the box is it didn't really matter how much say we gave if Black people were not in the buildings that we were building. And so I think that holding ourselves accountable by putting, and this might be helpful for James in thinking outside the box, is maybe if we put our outputs and outcomes that are outside of the box down somewhere, saying, here are some tangible goals that we as a committee will hold ourselves to that are outside of the box. I think, and when you start putting things in writing, which means you force yourself to be held accountable, that gives James something to look at and go, okay, that's outside the box. I think that saying all these things are great, but I think if we start putting the outputs and the outcomes we want that are outside the box actually in writing, might be helpful for committee members. So, because there's one thing of predicting something with the community, and there's a whole nother level when you make promises. And I think the way you make promises is really by putting things down on paper that hold you accountable, which builds trust. And so that's a recommendation I have, that some of the things that James or Amber are talking about, if we put them down on paper and map them out, and we check in saying, are we doing these things that are outside the box, might help with this conversation.
Appreciate those comments, Andre. I see that you're eager to respond. You want to go ahead?
I'm not eager to respond. I just was going to say it's a good comment, and sounds like one of our next upcoming meetings we ought to set out
Yep.
the expectations for this committee that would be outside of the box.
Yep.
To James' point, and what Felicia's talking about, what are the committee's expectations that they want to see achieved on this project? I mean,
Right.
up to this point, it's been, here are ODOT's expectations, and included in that are the committees, but to James's point too, they're around the federal guidelines. So how do we, how do we include now and track the committee's expectations?
Mhm.
Amber, did you have additional thoughts?
No.
This is Megan. I'll just say that I'm really looking forward to working with COAC as we move forward and kind of developing those outcomes or performance indicators for how we measure success. So I think that'll be a great conversation and point of collaboration here.
Great, thank you for that, Megan. Let's talk about next steps, conclusions and next steps. Amber, Andre, please tell us what we have coming up.
Really what we have right now is we have the Meet the Primes, and that's the event. We need your questions, and those questions could be as a topic, what is the contractor going to do outside the box? What commitments and things? So we need those by the 29th. As Amber said, we have the Meet the Primes in July, and then we have tentative July 16th. But we, again, as things are in flux right now because of the competitive process that we're in, that is tentative and it may change. As soon as we get notice, we will let you know and try to confirm some dates on the Meet the Primes and on July the 16th, whether we hold that date, because our primary focus right now is Meet the Primes and having you participate and get your questions and having that event. Down the road, we expect the successful proposer to come on board somewhere in the September timeframe, and we will be introducing you to them. And as part of that process, getting you their proposal for you to look at and review and get us comments back. And we'll start working on those months going forward on, they have a number of tasks and you're involved in helping them go through those tasks. So that's kind of when we look out the end of the year, is the first task they have is to write a diversity plan. And so we'll, that's kind of through the end of the year as we look at it right now.
Great. And just as a reminder, Megan and I will be reaching out to each of you, members of the COAC, for individual meetings. So please look for that correspondence from us. And if there's nothing else from any of my colleagues, I think we're going to get out here a little early to enjoy some of the sunshine. So thank you all for your active participation. I know sometimes it could be difficult via Zoom or any other virtual medium, but thank you for yet again another rich dialogue, and I hope everyone have a great evening, and we'll be seeing you soon. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.